guys, we're back. Unit 1, Lesson 6, Order of Operations, which in a lot of ways will be review, but reviewing some very important steps. When there is a car accident, officers at the scene need to know the speed of the car, how far the car skidded, and the coefficient of friction. Formulas can be used to determine this information. The first formula shown at the right is used to find a coefficient of friction for the road where the accident happened. That basically means how slippery was the road. An officer will drive their patrol car at a certain speed and then hit the brakes to find the skid distance. Find the coefficient of friction if the speed was 30 miles an hour and the skid was 50. So what they do is they use this formula and they substitute in two pieces of information in order to find the third. They can create an accident to find the coefficient of friction because they have a skid distance and they have a speed. So the top number there, S, the car's speed was 30 miles an hour. Down here, the distance was 50, how far the car skidded. And then they're going to have to follow order of operations. Fraction bar acts like a grouping symbol. We do everything in the numerator separate from everything in the denominator. And then you end up with a fraction where you divide numerator divided by denominator, and you get a coefficient of friction. In this case, it's 0.6. And that number translates to how slippery was the road. Once they've got that, they can then determine from a car how fast was the car going when it got in an accident. So our order of operations that we've had forever and for always are parentheses, all of the grouping symbols, brackets, braces, fraction bars, square root symbols, anything that is a grouping symbol. Typically, you've got PEMDAS, right? That should sound familiar. PEMDAS to help us remember. Parentheses, just one of the possible grouping symbols. Then exponents. Anything with an exponent comes next. Anything with multiplication or division is in the next layer, but we do them from left to right. So multiplication is not more important than division. Both multiplication and division happen in the same step from left to right. Then last, you've got your addition and subtraction, and those also happen from left to right. So if we flip this over, what we'll do is we'll take a look at the second formula. A second formula can be used to determine a car's speed. Find the speed of a car that skids 72 feet with a coefficient of friction of 0.5. So once we've got a car accident has happened, the police officers have determined a coefficient of friction, and we know how far the car skids because we can look at the evidence on the scene. We can substitute D, this particular car skid 72 feet, coefficient of friction at this particular location is 0.5. We can follow the order of operations. That radical acts like a grouping symbol. So we do anything underneath that first, which is where we get the 36. Then we actually take the square root of 36. Remember, the grouping symbol still takes priority, and we get 6. Last is multiplication. This car for this particular accident was going 33 miles an hour when the accident happened. Now, let's just say that the speed limit was 20. We would now know that the person was speeding. Let's say it was, poor weather conditions. Maybe they should have been going slower. So police officers can use a variety of formulas in their work. When we're looking at order of operations, we're typically looking at something like these, where it's just here's an expression, no equal sign, work through the order of operations to find the answer. So we'll start with any grouping symbols. This one has a fraction bar, so we do everything in the numerator separate from everything in the denominator. If I'm only looking at the numerator, I've got subtraction and addition, so I start on the left. 5 take away 13 is going to be -8. It's the same as 5 plus a -13. So -8 plus 16 in the numerator, and I can do 2 to the third in the denominator, which is 8. The -8 and 16 leaves me with 8 over 8, which is 1. And you'll notice I did my work vertically. You could have also chosen to do your work horizontally, and that would work the same if it's a question with a fraction bar. Now, this one does not have the fraction bar by itself, but it does have a fraction bar in it. You could do this one vertically. I'm going to continue doing mine. Sorry, you could do it horizontally. I'm going to continue doing mine vertically. Inside the radical, I have another grouping symbol of a fraction bar. So I'm going to do everything in the numerator first, which is only addition. So I have 27 over 3 inside the radical with an 8 waiting on the outside. I've got 27 over 3, which is a division worth 9. So I've got 8 root 9. I can take the square root of 9, which is plus or minus 3. right? Because the square root of 9 could be positive 3 or it could be negative 3. So technically, you're going to have two answers to this question. 8 times a positive 3 would be 24. 8 times a negative 3 would be negative 24. Technically, two answers because of the square root. Now, if you're only doing the principal square root, you would have only put the positive 3. This one, I've got parentheses and I've got a radical. I would start with the parentheses because they're on the left. Inside the parentheses, I'd start with the exponent. So 16 plus 8 plus 2, and under the radical, 9 times 4 is 36. Since they're not touching and don't have anything to do with each other, I can do them in the same step. 16 plus 8 in parentheses is 24 plus 2, and the square root of 36 is plus or minus 6, because again, 6 times 6 is 36. Negative 6 times negative 6, also 36. So 24 plus, and then 2 times plus or minus 6 is plus or minus 12. This is where it gets a little tricky. If I do 24 plus 12, I get 36. If I do 24 plus the negative 12, I get 12. Technically, this has two answers. The answer could be 36. The answer could be 12. And they're both correct, and they should both be there, the same as when we solve an equation. 3 problems left at the bottom, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to work them out in the video. If you're all set and you want to get started, feel free to pause at this point and work on the video check-in, but I will continue so that if anyone has any questions, you can reference some more examples. The square root of 81 plus 19, I'm going to start under the radical, anything in the numerator first. So square root of 100 over, and down here in the denominator 2, the square root of 25 is plus or minus 5. I did one step in the numerator, one step in the denominator because they're independent. Square root of 100 is plus or minus 10 over 2 times plus or minus 5 would also be plus or minus 10. Now, depending on which one gets the positive and which one gets the negative, your answer would be plus or minus 1, right? Because if you had one positive and one negative, you'd get a negative result. If they were the same sign, you'd get a positive result. So only two answers, plus or minus 1. This one, we've got a radical. We're going to do whatever is under the radical first because it acts like our grouping symbol. 48 minus 12 is 36. Notice this plus 13, not under the radical. Really important because only the 36 is going to be square rooted plus or minus 6 plus 13. Now we've got multiplication. We have to wait on the addition because multiplication comes first. 8 plus, this is going to be plus or minus 42. And to make your life easier, I would combine the numbers that don't have the plus or minus before you do anything else. So I'm going to combine the 8 and the plus 13, and I'm going to get 21 plus a positive or negative 42. So when I go to do it, I can either do 21 plus 42, which is 63, 21 plus a negative 42, which is negative 21. So two possible answers to that question because of the radical. Hopefully you're noticing a pattern that when it has a radical, there's usually two answers. It might be a plus or minus, or it might be two completely unique answers. 10 plus 36 divided by 4 times 3 minus 18. These are not parentheses that have operations inside of them. They are parentheses telling us it's multiplication. So we have division and we have multiplication, but which one's on the left? The 36 divided by 4 is the one on the left. So we're going to start with 36 divided by 4 is 9. And then I've still got whatever this result is times 3. There's your multiplication that's going to happen second because it wasn't the one on the left. So 10 plus 9 times 3 is 27 minus 18. Now I'm down to only addition and subtraction. We do them from left to right. So the 10 plus 27 is 37 minus 18 with a final answer of 19. So again, remember we have our steps on the front, and remember that multiplication and division happen from left to right. Addition and subtraction happen from left to right. See you in class.